Thank you. We will now turn to Group 20 on collection of data, provision of information and reporting. I call Amendment 275 in the name of Audrey Nicholl, grouped with amendments as shown in the groupings. I call on Audrey Nicholl to move Amendment 275 and to speak to other amendments of the group. Ms Nicholl.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I'll firstly move Amendment 275. So this group of amendments largely seeks to strengthen recording and reporting provisions in sections 23A, 24 and 26 of the bill, and at the heart of these amendments is safeguarding. So I'll begin with my own amendments and then I'll come on to other amendments in the group. So my amendments 275, 276 and 277 relate to duties on Scottish ministers to provide accessible information about assisted dying in the event it becomes legalised. Amendment 275 specifies the content of the information Scottish ministers must provide in this important section of the bill. It ensures that all information is comprehensive, accurate and balanced, including guidance on independent advice, safeguards against coercion or abuse, available alternatives such as palliative care and resources for suicide prevention and immediate support. Now, building on the concerns raised by my colleague Emma Roddick in Group 2, bolstering suicide prevention in the context of assisted dying is highly relevant for vulnerable individuals, such as people with disabilities who are more vulnerable to suicide ideation due to their disability. And I draw members' attention to the legal opinion by leading lawyer Tom Cross KC, who found this bill to fall short of safeguarding these individuals. This amendment seeks to clarify what accessible information must be provided by Scottish ministers, and it requires information to be set out on suicide prevention, including how to access immediate support. Now, this is essential for vulnerable people like those with depression who may be eligible for the bill if they fit the eligibility criteria. Along with Amendments 276 and 277, these amendments promote informed decision-making and ensure lawful assistance to end of life is accompanied by clear guidance on support and protection, as well as going some way in offering a level of protection to vulnerable individuals. Amendment 276 requires that all information provided under Section 23A is comprehensive, explicitly covering the legal, medical, social and ethical aspects of assisted dying. And it ensures that terminally ill adults, health professionals and the public receive full and balanced guidance, preventing selective or partial information and supporting informed decision-making. Again, accessible and balanced information is important for vulnerable individuals, particularly those with learning disabilities, given the general misunderstanding among the general public about what assisted dying means. Polling by Whitestone Insight shows that around 1 in 3 people who support assisted dying believe it means hospice or palliative care or the right to stop life-prolonging treatment. Clear, direct, balanced and non-euphemistic language is essential for any government guidance. Amendment 277 requires Scottish ministers to monitor and report on compliance, and it ensures that information is regularly reviewed, updated and publicly reported, and it establishes procedures to correct deficiencies. This prevents the provision of incomplete or biased information and guarantees that all recipients, terminally ill adults, professionals and the public have access to accurate and comprehensive guidance. This amendment is therefore a simple improvement that would give this section of the bill greater effect, and I therefore commend it to members. Though Section 23A is an important clause in principle, as it stands, it's too weak and poorly defined to be of greatest effect as a safeguard. So I trust members will feel able to support Amendments 275, 276 and 277. So turning to other amendments in the group, Stuart Macmillan's Amendment 279 strengthens the reporting requirement placed upon Public Health Scotland by removing reference to information only being provided, and I quote, only where it is known to them. And I strongly support this amendment. Other amendments 280, 59, 60, 61, 115, 62, 281, 282, 283 and 63 all extend reporting by Public Health Scotland on matters including the assessment process, first declarations, the provision of social care, side effects and adverse reactions, clinical recommendations to ministers and the operation of the period of reflection. Emma Roddick's amendments 284 and 287 require reports to include detailed information about safeguarding concerns, including the outcomes of any safeguarding investigations. And Amendment 287 requires reporting to go beyond just raw numbers and include a full analysis and comparison of data, for example, trends over time, risks to patient safety, and whether the provision of assisted dying is creating or worsening inequalities for particular groups, such as older or disabled people. Bob Doris's Amendment 64 inserts additional characteristics, such as deprivation and housing status. And Murdo Fraser's Amendment 295 inserts a requirement to report on the impact of an assisted dying provision on suicide prevention services, with Stephen Kerr's Amendment 296 inserting a similar amendment that relates to the impact of assisted dying provision on palliative care services. The only amendment that I would seek some clarity on is Liam MacArthur's Amendment 57 that relates to reporting on assessments broken down by eligibility or otherwise. It seems straightforward, but I'm very keen to hear Liam MacArthur's context and rationale for this particular amendment. So, Presiding Officer, as I said, all the amendments in this group are about safeguarding. They enhance reporting, allowing effective scrutiny and monitoring of the operation of the Act. So, as I said, I move Amendment 275.
Thank you, Ms Nicholl. I now call on Bob Doris to speak to Amendment 278 and other amendments of the group. Mr Doris.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. My amendments in this final group relate to the review of the operation of the Act, something that will be essential if this legislation is passed. It will only be possible to review the operation of the Act effectively and meaningfully if adequate data is gathered whilst the Act is in operation. Therefore, Amendment 278 and related Amendment 285 requires periodic detailed reviews of a representative sample of cases so that qualitative evidence is available about the operation of the Act if it becomes law, something that is aided by the Parliament passing my amendments on the medical practitioners' report requirements earlier in our deliberations. The bill after Stage 2 saw only basic statistics required to be gathered. These are important but are mainly quantitative and can't on their own shed light on some aspects of the bill. For example, what is the experience of registered medical practitioners in assessing people for capacity and coercion? What works well? What have they found difficult? What is the experience of family members involved in the process? Were there difficulties which could have been avoided? How adequate did they find the public information provided for in this bill? A case review process in Ontario, Canada, I've been told by the Scottish Partnership on Palliative Care, they believe provided to be a vital in identifying deficiencies in assessments and safeguarding vulnerable people. So why not have it in this legislation? Of course, yes.
Jamie Hepburn.
Having intervened with my friend Stuart Macmillan yesterday, I'll interview my friend Bob Doris today. If we'd been talking about a mechanism which resulted in many hundreds and hundreds of cases, I could see some sense in this provision. But I am slightly concerned, I see the government note makes this point, we are likely to be talking about a very small number of cases. What does he say to the concern that this could then veer into the area of being very clear about who the individuals are, the concern about opening up issues around privacy and so on and so forth?
Bob Doris.
I thank Jamie Hepburn for that intervention, and not to worry on intervening on me. That's not a problem. I would make 2 points, I think, in relation to that. The first point I would make is the government and public bodies have great experience in only publishing data that is statistically appropriately anonymised, and if they can't do that, then they can't publish it, and there's quite clear rules involved in that. In relation to a periodic case review, I've not set out how often that should be. I've left that to a generality. It would hopefully form the annual reports as well as the overall review of the Act, but clearly we don't know, is the point I make, Mr Hepburn, just how many people avail themselves of assisted dying. So it might be very small, but it might not be. So why not bolt this in place and do the periodic case review for a qualitative assessment of how it's working in practice? How I would respond to that point, but it's a reasonable point, I think, to make. My other amendments identify important data items without which it will not be possible to adequately monitor and understand the operation of the Act, which I will run through as briefly as I possibly can. Presiding Officer, 59 collects data on how many times the original medical practitioners conducting assessments took the steps provided for in Section 7. For instance, were inquiries carried out with health and social care professionals where provisions are made in Section 7. Amendment 60 would ensure we capture how many times medical practitioner reports had been completed and the reasons for approving or not approving an assisted death. 61 and 286 respectively would collect the number of applicants who were assessed as having or not having appropriate social care and palliative care respectively. 62 would collect the number of complications, adverse reactions and unintended effects reported under Section 15 on the provision of assistance. 63 will collect data on relevant professionals who have completed training requirements. 281 would gather the number of assisted deaths involving each practitioner, enabling the flagging of practitioners with unusually high rates. That might not happen, but it would be reasonable to gather that data anyway. 282 would gather data on the number of times the period of reflection was less than 14 days. I am keen to see all of these amendments on data gathering requirements with reporting to Scottish Ministers passed. Finally, I will briefly mention my Amendment 64 that Audrey Nicholl also made mention to. I think the details are important for full analysis of the impact of this Act across our society, but I acknowledge the challenges of collecting such data. 64 would capture data on whether a person who receives assisted dying lived alone. You can imagine why one would want to know that. In receipt of benefits, you can imagine why one would want to know that. The level of household deprivation and their housing status, all things that I think we reasonably want to know if there's patterns in relation to that, but it might be difficult to collect. I acknowledge that as well, but nevertheless, I've put that particular amendment forward. All worthwhile understanding any patterns in people who wish to seek and receive with assisted death. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Mr Doris. I now call on Stuart McMillan to speak to Amendment 279 and other amendments of the group. Mr McMillan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Amendments 279 and 290 strengthen the reporting duties in Section 24 by removing the vague qualifier, and I quote, insofar as known, and replacing it with a clear obligation of Public Health Scotland to take all responsible steps to obtain, verify and assess the completeness of required information. It ensures that gaps in data are transparently identified and explained rather than being obscured by uncertainty. This improves the reliability, the accountability and also credibility of reporting, enabling effective oversight and helping Parliament and the public to identify risks, trends or deficiencies in the operation of the Act at an early stage. Amendment 289 requires reports on assisted dying to be published and scrutinised by the Scottish Parliament. Transparency and parliamentary oversight are essential to ensure that the operation of the Act remains within its intended scope, and that's something that's already been touched upon today and previously during the Stage 3 proceedings by other MSPs. The evidence from overseas jurisdictions shows that assisted dying regimes can broaden over time in eligibility, practice or application. Therefore, the regulation, publication and scrutiny of reports will help Parliament, stakeholders and also the public to identify emerging trends or risks at an early stage and to take corrective action where necessary, thereby safeguarding against unintended expansion and maintaining public confidence in the law. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Mr Macmillan. I now call on Liam MacArthur to speak to Amendment 57 and other amendments in the group. Mr MacArthur.
Thank you, President Officer. I thank the members who have spoken so far in setting out the rationale for their amendments. My own amendments in this group 57 and 58 are technical and ensure that Public Health Scotland report on the number of assessments which conclude a person is eligible and the number which conclude a person is not. And in response to Audrey Nichols' query, at the moment the number of statements would be captured, but not the number of people deemed eligible and not eligible. And I think that's, a valuable strengthening of the provisions of the bill. Turning to Bob Doris's amendments 59 to 64, I'm not in support of amendments 59, 60 or 64, as I think that reporting requirements should remain targeted, purposeful and proportionate. I understand the rationale that Bob Doris has set out, but in particular Amendment 64 requires the collection of information on, for example, household status, receipt of welfare benefits, deprivation and housing status, which creates intrusive monitoring not clearly related to the bill's core safeguards. The reporting framework in the bill, as drafted, is designed to report on data collected by clinicians. Collecting the kind of information that would be required by 64, I think, falls outside the clinical role of doctors. And I take an intervention from Bob Doris.
I thank Liam MacArthur for that. It was a very brief intervention. I just wanted to make the point to Parliament, to yourself, Mr MacArthur, that I identified 64 separately from the rest of my amendments in data collection. I realise the issues with that, and I'm minded not to move that particular one. Just to inform members who might be considering other amendments, that one in particular I'm unlikely to move.
That's very helpful.
Liam MacArthur.
Does Brian Whittle still want to? Yeah, Brian Whittle.
Brian Whittle.
I'm very grateful to Mr MacArthur for giving way. I think, listening to Mr Doris speaking to his amendments, I think we've got to be really careful here. I think the collection of data here shouldn't be restricted, because it's the ability to interrogate it, and if some of the data doesn't reach the threshold that we require to be properly interrogated, so be it. But we shouldn't restrict the collection of data, because I think that what we learn out the back of that could be incredibly important as we move forward.
Liam MacArthur.
I think Brian Whittle makes a very important point. I think what Bob Doris was perhaps reflecting in his earlier intervention is that the rationale for why we would want to understand these sorts of things is one I think we'd all accept. I think what we're trying to do here is, though, put into place a bill and provisions within that bill that are deliverable. And I think the concepts such as, for example, the level of household deprivation, it does lack a clear definition and it's not appropriate for clinicians to make judgments on. I think Jamie Hepburn in an earlier intervention talked about potential privacy issues, given the numbers were involved. I mean, I listened carefully to Bob Doris's response to that, and I had some sympathy or some reassurance from the response he gave. But requiring terminally ill people to disclose details about financial information may also feel intrusive and could risk undermining the relationship with their doctor. So while I'm not opposed in principle to the requirement under 63, I'll take an intervention from
Elena Whittam.
Yeah, just briefly, and thank you for taking the intervention, Liam MacArthur. I'm just wondering whether the data that we would already have access to in terms of SIMD1, etc., would actually be something that Public Health Scotland would be able to use as some type of indicator that maybe could address some of the issues that Bob Doris raises.
Liam MacArthur.
I think that's a very reasonable point to make. I mean, I understand we are presented with a bill at the moment, and members will see that as the way in which we address the concerns that we have. But it may very well be that those concerns can be addressed, or the information in this instance that we're looking to gather can be gathered in other ways without putting further requirements on the face of the bill. So while I'm not opposed in principle to the requirement under Amendment 63 for Public Health Scotland to collect data on the number of practitioners undertaking training, I note the Government's view the amendment raises potential competence concerns and therefore wouldn't support it. In better news for Mr Doris, I'm inclined to support his Amendments 61 and 62. 61 would reinforce the safeguard in the bill that ensures patients have been offered or provided with appropriate social care by reflecting this in reporting. Amendment 62 may strengthen safety monitoring as it will ensure Public Health Scotland publishes the total number of complications, adverse reactions and unintended effects, and this would fit, I think, well with the safety monitoring framework under the bill as it stands. Turning to Audrey Nichols' amendments 275, 276, I'll take an intervention from the Cabinet Secretary.
I've heard what Mr MacArthur has said around Mr Doris's Amendment 61. I was going to cover this in my own remarks. Because Amendments 23 and 22 that cover this issue have been passed, is he concerned that there may be inconsistency in the bill if Amendment 61 is also passed?
Liam MacArthur.
That's a helpful clarification from the Cabinet Secretary. He may want to develop that argument in his own remarks later on. I'll certainly reflect on that, as I'm sure colleagues will across the chamber. Turning to Audrey Nichols' amendments 275, 276 and 277, these all seek to amend section 23A on the provision of information about assisted dying. These amendments seek to ensure that any information provided is balanced, comprehensive and accurate, which I consider would already be a requirement of the duty on Scottish ministers. Amendment 275 also requires that public communication features suicide prevention information. Without rehearsing the arguments I made in relation to the earlier grouping, international experts, as I said then, in suicide prevention have been explicit about the harm that conflating suicide prevention and assisted dying presents, and if I don't support Ms Nichols' amendments in this area. In terms of Stuart McMillan's Amendment 279, I don't see a benefit in asking Public Health Scotland to report on matters not known to them. As it stands, the inclusion of the words insofar as known allows, for example, Public Health Scotland to record reasons given by a person for wishing to be provided with assistance where they are known, recognising a person is not forced to provide such reasons and may prefer not to do so. Turning to Mr Doris's amendments 278 and 285, given the comprehensive extent of the review and reporting provisions contained in the bill, including requirements to report on any complications and adverse effects, I don't see the need for these amendments. However, I'm not opposed in principle and while not persuaded, I'm prepared to accept them if Parliament takes another view. Similarly, I question whether Jackie Bailey's Amendment 280 is necessary. Any terminally ill adults aged 18 who request assistance under the bill will be captured by the bill's existing record-keeping, review and reporting provisions. Those under 18 are not eligible for assistance, and the likelihood of anyone under 18 seeking assistance is extremely remote. I think it would be very difficult for such data to be collected in any meaningful way, so I'm not persuaded on 280, though again prepared to accept if Parliament takes a different view. Amendment 115 from Sue Webber mandates that Public Health Scotland include in their reporting information on potential complications, adverse reactions and unintended effects. Again, I don't consider this amendment necessary given the other provisions in the bill which would ensure such matters are appropriately recorded and reported on. This amendment would simply duplicate and confuse the bill's existing provisions. Bob Doris's amendments 281, 282, 283 and 286 all add to the information that Public Health Scotland must report to ministers. Amendment 281, I believe, would be captured by existing provision of subsection 2b and is not necessary. 282 and 283 would add reporting requirements relating to the period of reflection and time between statements being made under section 8 and a person's death. Information on the number of times the period of reflection is shortened is captured on the statement forms, but I have no issue with that being set out in section 24 as well. Amendment 286 relates to reporting on the numbers of patients who are assessed as having been provided or not provided with palliative care, which I consider to be reasonable, and I support those amendments. Amendment 284 from Emma Roddick would, in my view, add further reporting requirements on Public Health Scotland, which risk duplicating the annual reporting and 5-year review processes in an overly prescriptive way. I'm not persuaded such amendments would be helpful, but again, I'm content to accept if Parliament takes a different view. Miles Briggs' Amendment 288, which I can support, would add reporting requirements around the availability of health and social care services to patients making a first declaration. However, I'm not supportive of Stuart McMillan's Amendment 289 as it duplicates and cuts across the annual reporting provisions already set out in the bill. I'm also not persuaded in Stephen Kerr's Amendment 291, which similarly risks duplicating and confusing the existing reporting and review requirements. The bill already requires the reporting of information, including laying each annual report before Parliament, and also provides for a full review after 5 years of operation, which must include reporting on the effective operation of the Act, including the Government's response to any concerns. I also consider Stuart Macmillan's Amendment 290 to be unnecessary and maybe overly burdensome in terms of what would be asked of Public Health Scotland. It is not at all clear how, for example, Public Health Scotland are expected to verify information that has been provided to it under the terms of the Act, so I'm not persuaded by 290. Likewise, I don't consider Sue Webber's Amendment 116 necessary or would aid the reporting and review processes. As I've said, annual reports are required by the Bill, which also provides for a comprehensive review after 5 years, allowing a suitable period of time for assistance to be lawfully available so that trends in meaningful data and experience can be considered to inform any future decisions. Turning to Murdo Fraser's amendments, I don't support 294 and 295 relating to the impact of the Bill on suicide prevention services. As I've said repeatedly and say again, assisted dying is not and must not be conflated with suicide. I also don't believe Amendment 296 is necessary given the Bill's existing provisions on the Code of Practice for Palliative Care. Finally, Stephen Kerr's, very briefly, Mr Kerr.
Stephen Kerr.
I gently push back on Liam MacArthur's conclusion on 296 because he has very carefully said throughout this whole process that he does not see palliative and end-of-life services and assisted dying as an either-or. But this provision in 296 is the fulfilment, in part, of what he has repeatedly said, because it makes consideration of the impact on palliative care and end-of-life services part of the required reporting. Does he not accept that that creates the either-or that he has often spoken about?
Liam MacArthur.
I don't accept that because of the other provisions in the bill and indeed the provisions that have been added to the bill as a result of the amendments that have already been passed during stage 3. I think there is a legitimate argument to make in support of an amendment, but if it ignores what is already in the bill as things stand, then I think it misrepresents the position as things stand, and that either-or between palliative care and assisted dying is not reflected in the way that Mr Kerr suggests. Finally, Stephen Kerr's Amendment 310 seeks to make the regulations in Section 24 subject to the affirmative procedure. I should note that the regulations are currently subject to negative procedure, and Mr Kerr has not altered that provision. So if this amendment was agreed, the regulations would be subject to both procedures, something I'm sure Mr Kerr would agree would be a legal first that we should be striving to avoid at this stage in the Parliament. That error aside, I'm content, as was the DPLR committee when it considered the bill, that these regulations should be subject to the negative procedure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr MacArthur. And I call Jackie Bailey to speak to Amendment 280 and other amendments in the group. Ms Bailey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And this is, of course, my last amendment in this last group. Amendment 280 adds to the report already required from Public Health Scotland to Scottish ministers. So in addition to recording the number of people seeking assisted dying, perhaps broken down by characteristics like people who have made a first declaration, or, if they decided not to go through with it, this amendment would capture data on those too young, that is under 18, who may have made a request. I absolutely understand Liam MacArthur's position, but he is right. This would apply to a small number of cases, but I think it's important that we understand this because, after all, my perspective is one of protection of children, and shaping approaches to palliative care would be informed by this. In general terms, I share Bob Doris's view. The more data collecting amendments, the better, because I think this is a complex area of policy and legislation, and we do need to understand how it works in practice and whether there are any unintended consequences. With that, I'll draw my remarks to a close. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Ms Bailey. I now call Sue Webber to speak to Amendment 115 and other amendments of the group. Ms Webber.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And can I first make a remark, just that in the last few minutes we've received an email from the Royal Pharmaceutical Society in Scotland, who have also stated their opposition to the Assisted Dying Bill following the removal of vital protections to protect pharmacists who conscientiously oppose. And that goes to what some of these amendments are, because we should be making decisions that are driven around data. And my amendments 115 and 116 seek to strengthen reporting and accountability in relation to the use of approved substances under Section 15(1), because it requires that any complications, side effects or adverse reactions experienced by persons provided with an approved substance are documented in detail, including the type of effect, frequency, substance use used and any clinical or professional recommendations made to address these issues, because all drugs have side effects. And we heard last week from a palliative care doctor how specialised the service is that they offer, how every single patient is different, and that drugs act differently in every single patient's circumstance. And that's points I made to my amendments at stage 2 that were cast aside by those that claim to be nurses. We know that the cocktail of drugs that is used in assisted dying is a toxic combination that includes paralytics. We are not sure of what a person undergoing an assisted death is going through because the paralytics act first and quickly. This is not a Disney death, and serious side effects happen. For some people, the drugs do not work. Others take hours to die, and we heard of those earlier on this week from Ruth Maguire and Audrey Nicholl. Who's asking to intervene? Oh, Elena Whittam. Yes, sorry, I couldn't hear you, Ms Whittam.
Thank you for taking the intervention, Sir Webber. I find that turn of phrase particularly distasteful, and I wonder if the member would reflect on that and think about whether my mother's death that was legal under the current law, that took over 2 weeks, in which she starved to death, was a Disney death.
Sue Webber.
The term is not relating to what your mother experienced. It is relating to the perception that many have of what an assisted dying death would look like. And we have heard from members elsewhere in this chamber that that is not the reality. We have to stop pretending that that is the reality, because it is not. Serious side effects happen. For some people, the drugs do not work, and for others, they take hours to die. So if we do not monitor and record these situations carefully, we are unable to ensure that this service is as safe as it possibly can be. Colleagues, as we've just heard, this is clearly an incredibly difficult subject, and I may or may not be perhaps trying to get my point over succinctly, but emotions are high in the chamber, and they have been. But studies from the Netherlands and the US have noted that while complications are infrequent, they do occur, with some reports citing rates of 1.2% to 7%, depending on the methods. So that's either if it's intravenous or oral. And these complications can and do cause distress, and often require the administration of additional medication to complete the process, something we've yet not had clarity from as well throughout the debate about what happens when the drugs don't work. This amendment also imposes a statutory duty on the Scottish ministers to ensure that all recommendations are acted upon within 6 months of receiving the report, and to publish a statement describing the measures taken. The purpose of this amendment is to improve patient safety, enhance transparency, and ensure that lessons from adverse outcomes are systemically applied to prevent reoccurrence. Colleagues, this is a flawed bill that we can tinker around the edges and try to make safe, but it is fundamentally flawed. Within the powers that this Parliament has, we are unable to pass a safe bill, and we should not pass this bill. We cannot legislate for the drugs that are used, for the training of healthcare professionals, and for what happens when the drugs don't work. Presiding Officer, I move the amendments in my name. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Webber. I now call Emma Roddick to speak to Amendment 284 and other amendments of the group. Ms Roddick.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Colleagues will know that in general I am a big fan of data, and I think it's going to be really important that if this bill does become law, we collect the right ones. Amendment 287 requires reporting under the Act to include analysis of trends, patient safety risks and safeguarding concerns. We have international comparisons, which I've heard both sides of this debate pick apart and hold up as examples both for and against this bill. We do not know who will access assisted dying in Scotland, how that will look for them, or what impacts it will have. I expect that the picture will be different even in the Highlands and Islands compared to Glasgow. We do not know with certainty what impact protected characteristics in the context of an island nation with pockets of deprivation, depopulation, even lack of vitamin D will have on our population and the way that they seek to exercise rights under this bill if it is passed. Undoubtedly, without data collection on equalities trends, there will be compelling anecdotal evidence on both sides to claim that there is no equalities impact or that there are extreme equalities impacts. What this amendment does is let us keep an eye on what is actually happening here, not what we think or claim or guess is happening, not what happens in only the best or worst case, but trends and biases over time. We need to know whether groups with particular protected characteristics are using assisted dying more or less than expected in comparison to others. We have a duty to dig deeper into any trends, and to do so, we have to know what those trends are. UN experts have warned that disabled people, older people, and especially older disabled people may feel subtly pressured to end their lives prematurely due to the lack of appropriate services and support. That to me seems inevitable, and I am deeply concerned about the inherent risk of ableism being promoted through use of assisted dying, which is why I can't support the bill. But we do know that these inequalities span more than disability. I also want to know if poorer people, women, carers, racialised minorities use assisted dying more or less than others if it is offered in Scotland. I want to know if the known risks to these groups in healthcare generally, the difficulty that they face in accessing support services, the higher prevalence of disability, degenerative conditions, poverty and sexually transmitted diseases are having an impact on why and when assisted dying is used. What we then do with those data is up to us, but I hope that Parliament can agree that we should at least collect it. My Amendment 284 similarly collects data on safeguarding concerns, ensuring that if the Act works as it should and results in referrals to adult protection, social work, police or other safeguarding authorities, the information on those referrals can be taken into account when any policy changes or adaptations are made to the legislation and how it operates in future. My amendment also requires a summary of outcomes from those safeguarding investigations. There will undoubtedly be concerns raised that amount to nothing, and there is no risk found to the patient. And that is great and will show that the system is working as it should. I would expect those involved in delivering assisted dying to be extremely cautious and instigate investigations where there are slight concerns, allowing that investigation to determine whether or not they are founded. These data are important to collect so that we can see that the overall picture is as expected and hoped, I think, by everybody who's spoken to safeguarding in these debates, regardless of their position on the bill itself. My amendments ensure that we capture outcomes too, and I hope everybody would be reassured to know that people in positions to spot issues erred on the side of caution. Audrey Nicholl's amendments in this group are very important too in ensuring transparency. I would say that this group overall is essential. We must be able to accurately review and reflect on the operation of this legislation if it becomes law. I do have to say I think the intent of Bob Doris's amendments are very important as well. I heard Elena Whittam's arguments about SIM-D, but knowing how unhelpful SIM-D can be in describing rural and island poverty, and knowing that I myself live in the highest ranked SIM-D area in the Highlands, I'm not sure that that general data set is helpful in checking what the actual socioeconomic status of people making use of assisted dying is. We shouldn't leave it to guesses and hope. We have to know who is accessing this and what issues have come up as a result. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Roddick. I now call Miles Briggs to speak to Amendment 288 and other amendments of the group. Mr Briggs.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. My Amendment 288 requires Public Health Scotland to report on the health and social care services available to individuals who made a first declaration, including pain and symptom management and psychological support. This should also include reporting on the availability of information about accessing palliative care services to persons seeking an assisted death. And I believe this complements my Amendment 299, which we debated yesterday in Group 15, and I move 288 in my name.
Thank you, Mr Briggs. I call Stephen Kerr to speak to Amendment 291 and other amendments in the group. Mr Kerr.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I know how uncomfortable much of the dialogue around this debate is, and because we're facing really uncomfortable truths about our own mortality and the mortality of the people we love and that, I know, is dear to all of our hearts. And in offering my comments today, I want to be clear that I understand the sensitivities of people who might choose to support this bill, but I hope also that those who support the bill understand how deeply felt my and other people's opposition is to the bill. Now look at Group 20 as a whole, because it asks Parliament to reflect on something that is often overlooked when legislation of this scale is debated. Not simply how a law begins, but what happens after, the outcomes, the consequences, after it comes into force, and how this Parliament ensures that we remain alert to its consequences. I know that one of the responsibilities we have in this Parliament is for post-legislative scrutiny. This bakes in that the necessity of post-legislative scrutiny in a bill that is such a significant piece of legislation as this. So my amendments are concerned with that responsibility. 291 addresses what happens when the reports required under Section 24 of the Bill are produced. These reports will contain important information about how the law is operating in practice. They will show trends, identify safeguarding concerns, and reveal whether particular groups are being affected in ways Parliament may never have intended. At present, the Bill requires those reports to be produced. I do give way, yes?
Cabinet Secretary.
I appreciate Mr Kerr giving way. Does he accept, given what he has just said, that there is a requirement for post-legislative scrutiny, that his amendments could additional cost and a prescription that is not required, given that there is already post-legislative scrutiny in place?
Stephen Kerr.
Yeah, but that's the whole point. I'd say to the Cabinet Secretary that my experience, having served only 5 years in the Parliament, is that we're not particularly good at scrutinising the legislation. And by the way, Jackie Bailey is right, as other colleagues have been. Emma Roddick just said it. I agree with her too. I will vote for all of the amendments that call for more data. I will vote for all of the amendments that call for levels of post-legislative reporting, because we need to be better at that than we are. And when we're talking about such a significant piece of legislation, I hope that Neil Gray understands that I particularly feel that we need to have that level of detail and data so that the scrutiny that we give to this bill, should it become an act, would be of a different character than the run-of-the-norm sort of scrutiny that I'm afraid I have experienced in the last 5 years. So if I might just say again that about 291. 291 closes the gap. The gap that I'm referring to is that sometimes bills require reports, but they don't necessarily require ministers to respond to what those reports reveal. And 291 closes that gap. It would require Scottish ministers to consider the findings carefully and publish a statement setting out what action they have taken or proposed to take in response. That statement must be laid before this Parliament. If ministers conclude that no action is necessary despite serious findings, they must explain that decision openly too. Collecting information is not enough. Parliament must ensure that what we learn leads to reflection and, if necessary, to change. Amendment 296 addresses another important dimension of that monitoring. It requires the reports produced under the Act to include the impact of this legislation on suicide prevention services. Suicide prevention is one of the most important responsibilities within our healthcare system. It's been mentioned earlier in today's proceedings. Every day, dedicated professionals work with individuals who are experiencing despair, isolation and the overwhelming belief that life has become too difficult to continue. If assisted dying becomes part of the healthcare landscape in Scotland, it will inevitably alter the context in which those services operate. That change may be subtle at first, but if pressures begin to emerge, if attitudes shift, or if unintended consequences appear, Parliament should know. Amendment 296 ensures that we do. Amendment 310 addresses a related but equally important question: how the Parliament scrutinises the regulations that will govern this reporting and monitoring framework. Under the bill as drafted, those regulations would be subject to the negative procedure. My amendment would instead require the affirmative procedure. meaning that they would not come into force without the explicit approval of this Parliament. That is not an unreasonable safeguard. If the law we pass today will affect how life may end in Scotland, the systems that we oversee and monitor in terms of its operation should not be changed quietly or inadvertently. They should be subject to full parliamentary scrutiny, and we have rehearsed the arguments for that in previous groups, and I think that case has been largely accepted by a majority of members. So members across the chamber will approach this legislation, I fully well know, and as I started out by saying, from different perspectives. But I've always been clear in my view. I think other people have been very clear in their view, and I respect that. But regardless of where we stand in relation to the principle of assisted dying, surely we can agree on this. If Parliament takes a step of this magnitude, we must watch carefully what follows. I give way to Bob Doris.
Bob Doris.
Listening to Mr Kerros, and reading your amendments, Mr Kerros, under Amendment 296, which is asked the Scottish Government to identify any shortfalls in funding, staffing, other resources for these services in relation to palliative care. That is within the terms of your amendment, but also the statement from the Scottish ministers about additional funding, recruitment and training and other resources to ensure no reduction in palliative and end-of-life care services. All very noble, but my slight concern with that, and I have some sympathies to all of that, is that I have tried through the course of this debate to say palliative and end-of-life care services stands independent and on its own and has to be appropriately funded. End of story, irrespective of assisted dying. And your amendment potentially, Mr Kerr, conflates those two.
Always to the Chair, Stephen Kerr.
I'm not sure that I followed how the last point. I'm willing to give way to Bob Doris if he wants to expand on his last point about the conflation of these two issues. What I'm trying to do is safeguard the funding and the level of service and frankly, the equality that should exist across Scotland in terms of access, which we have heard repeatedly again today, as we have in the previous 2 days or 3 days of the consideration of these amendments. That doesn't exist. I'm willing to give way again.
Bob Doris.
I'll be very briefly. So 296D talks about additional funding where there are shortfalls in palliative care provision. As a backbench MSP of government, I say there's shortfalls in palliative care provision just now. So 296 suggests that irrespective of this legislation, we are tying increase in palliative care funding directly to the provision of assisted dying, if I've read the amendment correctly, and that presents a little bit of an issue.
Stephen Kerr.
No, so I'm glad I'm glad that Bob Doris has further expanded on his intervention. That is absolutely not the case with my amendment. It's quite the opposite. Because, again, I lean heavily on what Liam MacArthur, the member in charge, has said repeatedly about his view as a proponent of this measure, that the assisted dying measures he's proposing and palliative care and end-of-life services go together. It's not an either-or. Well, that being the case, then the provision of the services that Bob Doris and I both feel very strongly about, and I pay tribute to the work that he's done over many years in this area, that's why this amendment is so important, because the issues of palliative care and end-of-life services need to stay preeminent in the consideration of the Parliament. That's why that's the root of the number of interventions I've made on other members during the last few days. And I hope that he's satisfied that 296 is not what he thinks it is, and he accepts my explanation. The bottom line is, and I conclude by saying, if Scotland, I'm happy to give way to Christine Graham.
Christine Graham.
Please do. I absolutely reiterate what I said earlier, and I think what the member in charge has said is, for me, it's certainly not an either-or. And I truly hope that this bill makes this Parliament and the next Parliament and any Parliament really look at the provision of palliative care, because it's been a bit of a neglected area. What concerns me is we can deal with this not in legislation. This is a matter for policy. Policy and financial decisions by successive governments about how we address the issue of the increasing need for palliative care, not simply in the end-of-life context, but generally. From babies and children and adolescents onwards, the whole issue, we should really look at how we provide this and not have left it so much to the charitable sector.
Stephen Kerr.
I am grateful for that intervention. I respect very much what Christine Graham has said and also her long-standing advocacy of what she has just said. That is not, the situation that we're living with currently is, I think Douglas Ross said earlier, he said it was a national disgrace. And it is, that there is such inequality in relation to the choices that Scots face, and depending on what part of the country they live in, and indeed their circumstances, which has been highlighted by other speakers. So just to conclude my comments in support of my amendments, if we move down this path, and I hope we don't, we have a duty to ensure that Parliament remains informed, that ministers remain accountable, and that emerging risks are recognised before they become entrenched. And I say for the last time, because this is the last time in the consideration of the amendments that I will have the opportunity to speak in addressing colleagues, for legislation dealing with matters of life and death, the vigilance of this Parliament is not an optional. It's the responsibility of this Parliament. If we take these decisions, if we move in this direction, our vigilance, our continuing intense scrutiny of how this all works out, because so much of it is so vague. Liam MacArthur himself accepted that. The actual means by which this will be done. The nature of the structures, the costs. I mean, there's been so many areas where colleagues have been faced with the response to the questions we've raised have been, well, we don't know how this will work. Well, that being the case, and us being so much beholden to guidance, it is critical that the responsibilities of this Parliament do not end with the passing of this bill, if that's what we're going to do, as we've done with other measures. So, again, I would ask colleagues to support Amendments 291, 296 and 310. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Mr Kerr. I now call Murdo Fraser to speak to Amendment 294 and other amendments of the group. Mr Fraser.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. My amendments 294 and 295 build on other amendments in this group from Audrey Nicholl and others, and strengthen the annual reporting duty, which requires review of the impact on palliative and end-of-life care services, extending that to suicide prevention measures. Now, Presiding Officer, I know this is an emotive area for colleagues. We discussed this in the debate this morning. I know there are colleagues who do not like the use of language around suicide or assisted suicide being used in reference to this bill. I would just quote three things to them. First of all, Inclusion Scotland, who represent disabled people, have been clear that their view that the correct language in relation to this bill is assisted suicide, because that's the way that their members who represent the disabled community in Scotland see this. Secondly, our late colleague Jim Wallace, the former Deputy First Minister, said in an interview in 2022, the term assisted dying is misleading. What is actually being proposed is assisted suicide. That is, that was Lord Wallace's view, of course, Liam MacArthur's predecessor, as the Lib Dem MSP for Orkney. But perhaps most powerfully in this context, let me quote the International Association for Suicide Prevention. So the international experts in this field who've said there is overlap and equivalence between suicide and assisted suicide. And let me quote directly from the statement they made on the 1st of December 2025. And they say this: "We must ensure that all persons considering ending their lives or having their lives ended by others have access to high-quality suicide prevention assessments and interventions, regardless of their problems, circumstances and status of their eligibility for assisted suicide." Not my words, Presiding Officer, the International Association for Suicide Prevention. I will, of course, give way to Claire Hockey.
Claire Hockey.
I thank Murdo Fraser for taking my intervention again. The organisations and the individual that he quoted are not members of this Parliament. They are not here speaking on behalf of their constituents and on behalf of the people of Scotland. And for that reason, I would ask that Mr Fraser moderates his language, de-weaponises it and uses the language in the bill and the proposed legislation rather than using the terms that he has done.
Murdo Fraser.
Well, the member has put our view on the record. All I have done is quote from the international experts on suicide prevention, and members can make up their own view on whether it's appropriate to quote those people or not in the context of this debate. But let me just make one more point in closing, because well, I'll give away.
I think the member should consider that if somebody's mental state is such that they have a terminal illness but it's driven them to suicidal thoughts, that would be part of the assessment on capacity by 2 of the medical practitioners at the very, very least, and referrals perhaps also to social work and others under the guidance. So it's not a blank cheque. There are measures in place to ensure mental capacity.
Murdo Fraser.
I don't think Christine Graham is disagreeing with me in relation to that intervention she has just made. All I'm saying is that, as I was arguing earlier, suicide prevention should be made available to those, and we should do far more in society to promote suicide prevention. I just want to close, just if I may, Presiding Officer, just one comment on the wider debate about palliative care, because we've just heard that from Stephen Kerr and others. And I think the one thing that is clear in this whole debate is that there is a unanimity of view in this chamber that we need to see greater support for palliative care. We simply do not have enough palliative care doctors and support services across the country. And I think everybody, regardless of where they stand in this debate, and regardless of whether or not this bill eventually passes, would agree that needs to be happening. And we've had the discussion around whether that will be aided or abetted by assisted dying or not. There was a study by Anscombe Bioethics Centre who found that between 2012 and 2019, palliative care funding did increase in European countries which had assisted dying at a rate of 7.9% in that period. But in European countries without assisted dying in the same period, it increased by 25%. So countries with assisted dying did see increases in funding, and that point has been made during this debate, but we had a much lower increase in funding in countries that don't have it. So we should just reflect on that. But perhaps I can just close by saying, let us, whatever else we think about this bill, let us agree in the next Parliament we do better on palliative care. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Fraser. I call Rona Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I rise to speak against Sue Webber's amendment. Professor Michael Dooley, commissioned by the government in Australia to research and find the approved substance, wrote to the Health Committee and he outlined 100% efficacy of the drug protocol in Australia. Pharmacy stakeholders, including the RCP, Community Pharmacy Scotland and others, met Professor Dooley in Glasgow. So we know that the source of the drugs can work at 100% efficacy, and nobody has not died from these drugs. And just finally, I'm not a nurse, but I imagine others in the chamber who are would be offended by Ms Webber's assertion that the words "those who claim to be a nurse." Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Mackay. I call Jamie Green.
Thank you. Just further to the debate we've just had, I think over the course of the last 4 days it's been clear there's been a small number of MSPs who've had a lot to say and a lot of MSPs who've had not much to say. I include myself in that latter category of being in listening mode. And equally there are a number of us who will have to go away from this chamber in an hour or so and spend the next few days reflecting on what we've heard, both from contributions but also the state of the bill as drafted and in amendments. And I think that's an incredibly important task that each and every one of us will take away, and I know we will do it studiously in our own way. But I think from this morning's session, like others having been here, I was struck by the testimony of Ms Whittam, who gave a very powerful and very personal representation of the status quo. And Mr Kerr is right, and Mr Fraser is right, that this whole discussion is uncomfortable, but it should be, I think, uncomfortable. Death is not always pleasant under the status quo, no matter how far palliative care takes it. And that's become so sadly apparent too, is we all want palliative care to improve.
Any reporting mechanisms which help future governments make policy in this area, I welcome, and I'll support some of them from Group 20. But the very idea that people facing a terminal prognosis with months or weeks to live, as is the case will be in this bill as it has been amended, but the idea that these people are somehow naive to what the end might look like, I find both incredibly insensitive as indeed patronising to those people. And I think the question that really we have to grapple with, and I'm one of those people, as I believe Ross Greer is, and perhaps a few others, is whether we want to grant people any and all choices about how the manner of their death might be. And at the moment, that is clearly not the case. Not everyone has that choice. And I would say, if there is such a thing as a Disney death, and that's a phrase that's been used in this chamber in the last hour, then that's the sort of death that I want. I would love to have a Disney death if such a thing exists. But in the absence of fairy tale death, what is the next big thing? What is the next best thing? And the question I will have to wrestle with, and others will, is if I am willing on Tuesday evening to deny others the right to choose, then I am denying myself that right too. But equally, if I vote to give others that right to choose, I'm giving myself that right to choose. And that is something each and every one of us will have to consider over the next few days before we come back and vote on Tuesday. And I would ask members to reflect on that question, because that is the fundamental question that we've been asked to consider this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Green. I now call the Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, thank you. I open my contribution in this final group by asking all colleagues to be mindful of several consequential amendments that are to come in the raft of amendments that we will vote on at the conclusion of the amending stage. For instance, Bob Doris's Amendment 60 was contingent on Amendment 37 passing, which it has. I have also referenced Bob Doris's Amendment 61 in intervention to Mr MacArthur. Amendment 23 inserted, I quote, palliative care after appropriate social care in section 6(2)AA, but Amendment 61 does not account for that addition. It is a relatively minor but still a technical issue for colleagues to be aware of as we conclude our voting today. Amendment 63 would require Public Health Scotland's report to include information about the number of persons having completed training under the Act. As I've already outlined, the training provisions in the bill may raise issues of legislative competence and are therefore recommended for removal, with any necessary provision made instead through an order under Section 104 of the Scotland Act 1998. Amendment 64 would add to the list of characteristics by which information in Public Health Scotland's report is to be broken down, which from a deliverability perspective is very prescriptive on the data to be collected and analysed. Setting these requirements out in primary legislation ties limited resources into statutory obligations and does not allow for statisticians to adapt to changing needs. Furthermore, new processes and investment would be needed to be included to support this level of data collection, development and reporting. And I would make a similar comment on Amendment 287. On Amendment 116, from a delivery perspective, the requirements in this provision are resource-intensive, particularly given the reporting requirements already addressed under Section 26. It also seems to be requiring Public Health Scotland to provide clinical recommendations to be actioned by Scottish ministers, which would appear to be going beyond its usual remit. Furthermore, it does not allow for Scottish ministers in reviewing these recommendations to make a final decision on whether or not these should be actioned based on both the report and any other relevant information. Amendment 275 adds significantly to the information to be provided by Scottish ministers under Section 23A and would appear to be resource-intensive, potentially impacting on the clarity and accessibility of the information so provided. Amendment 276, also to do with the information provided under 23A, is similarly resource-intensive. In addition, from a technical perspective, the amendment is very wide-ranging and lacks clarity. The Scottish Government's view is that Amendment 277 would be resource intensive and therefore incur significant cost to establish new processes and provide an annual report setting out whether requirements have been met with regard to the duty to provide information. This would also likely have an impact on the ability to provide comprehensive information by diverting limited resources to this reporting and monitoring mechanism. Amendment 278 would create a requirement for periodic detailed reviews to take place. Given the small numbers of people expected to undergo an assisted death in the early years, it may be difficult to balance the need for these reviews with the privacy of the individuals involved. Legal issues could also arise if the publication of a detailed assessment of a sample of cases was to result in the disclosure of private personal data. On Amendment 279, the Scottish Government is concerned that the removal of "insofar as known to Public Health Scotland" from Section 24(2) would risk Public Health Scotland failing in a statutory duty should such information not be obtainable. I give way to Mr Whittle.
Brian Whittle.
Very grateful to the Cabinet Secretary for giving way. And it's kind of the similar point I made earlier on. It's not the collection of data that we should be worried about here, because we can collect as much data as we possibly can to potentially be deployed in the future. And if we don't reach the threshold that the Cabinet Secretary indicates here, that would retain anonymity, we just don't use that data. But not to collect it, I think, is the wrong way to go.
Cabinet Secretary.
Mr Whittle has made his case. I've set out the Government's perspective. It's for colleagues to decide. I have no further comment to make on the intervention that Mr Whittle has made. It's a perfectly reasonable argument that he makes. Amendment 290 would impose requirements on Public Health Scotland around obtaining information. From a legal perspective, it is not clear what remit Public Health Scotland would have to require such information to be provided. I would note Section 25, which already provides for Scottish ministers to make provision by way of regulations about the provision of information to Public Health Scotland. Amendment 290 also provides that where information is required by Section 24(2) cannot be obtained, the report must specify the information that is missing, explain the reasons why it could not be obtained and set out the steps taken to obtain it. While this goes some way to addressing the concerns I have just raised regarding Amendment 279, it does so in a way that would put further burden on Public Health Scotland's resources. On Amendment 284, the Scottish Government's view is that this would place additional data collection and reporting requirements on Public Health Scotland and other bodies in relation to safeguarding concerns, referrals and outcomes. This would require careful alignment with existing adult protection processes, information sharing arrangements and data handling requirements, including distinctions between substantiated and unsubstantiated concerns. Amendment 288 would require the report submitted by Public Health Scotland to include an assessment of the availability, quality and distribution of health and social care services to persons who made a first declaration. Public Health Scotland do not currently collect data on the availability, quality and distribution of health and social care services in the manner requested. As such, new processes and investment would need to be included to support this level of data collection, development and reporting. There may also be a need for duties to be placed on persons holding such information, such as health boards, to provide it to Public Health Scotland. From a legal perspective, there may be a lack of clarity as to the meaning of quality and distribution of health and social care services. On Amendments 289, 291, 295, these would have significant cost and resource implications. On Amendment 296, I refer colleagues to the comments I made on Amendments 298 and 299 in the previous group regarding the difficulties of collating required data on palliative care. For the remaining amendments in this group, Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government has no comment other than the technical points to be found in the commentary.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. I now call on Audrey Nicholl to wind up and to press or withdraw Amendment 275. Ms Nicholl.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I will try and keep my remarks fairly succinct. And I opened this group of amendments describing them as straightforward. However, that may have unintentionally understated the crucial importance of data and reporting. And that's given that we know where assisted dying is legalised. Reporting provisions sometimes have sadly served as mechanisms for either widening out eligibility and relaxing safeguards, or for not taking any corrective action when major issues are flagged. It is crucially important that relevant and accurate information is captured to ensure that the concerns around vulnerable individuals who could be harmed by assisted dying legislation, those with physical and learning disabilities, people with eating disorders, victims of domestic abuse, those in poverty and many others remain protected by robust safeguards, and that the operation of legislation does not drift over time. So on Jackie Bailey's Amendment 280, this would record how many persons under the age of 18 or under, requested assistance to end their lives under this regime. Now, I welcome this amendment, which would increase accountability. We know that, shockingly, there have been successful efforts in some jurisdictions to broaden access to assisted dying in this age group. And in Canada, a 2023 Parliamentary Committee review of their assisted dying legislation recommended the expansion of assisted dying to children, though I note this recommendation has not yet been advanced. And we know that public support in Scotland falls quite significantly when they consider the fact that in the Netherlands and Belgium, children of any age may, in certain circumstances, be eligible for assisted dying. Now, this tells me that the public view the risk of this becoming a provision in Scotland is just too high. I note the clarification provided by Liam MacArthur on Amendment 57. My concern with that one was that, whilst this does seem innocuous, I'm worried about the unintended ramifications, given that this replicates the type of recording seen in Australia, which has gone on to be used by review boards and campaigners to argue for widening access. And I'll bring in Liam MacArthur.
Liam MacArthur. I'm grateful to Audrey Nicholl. I want to take her back to her earlier comment. I mean, as I've acknowledged, there are no two assisted dying laws anywhere in the world that are exactly the same. And we do, as we have been discussing this morning and this afternoon, need to make sure we understand how, if it's introduced, it's working in practice here. But what we do know is that there is no example, as the Health Committee in the House of Commons concluded after a 14-month inquiry, no example of a terminal illness mental capacity model of assisted dying that has expanded its eligibility criteria. And that dates back to Oregon in the late 1990s. Yes, there are jurisdictions that have models of assisted dying that are more expansive. Canada and Benelux are the ones that she's referred to. But there is no example of them amending their criteria to become less eligible or reduce the eligibility criteria. But as I say, I would reinforce the fact that there is no example of a jurisdiction with a terminal illness mental capacity model of assisted dying that has expanded their eligibility criteria over the years. Audrey Nicholl.
I thank the member for his intervention, and I very much accept the point with regard to different models. And I think, drawing on the comments he's made, perhaps different models have different strengths and weaknesses, but I absolutely note the point that he has made. So, my amendments 275 and 276 and 277 and the amendments of Bob Doris, Emma Roddick, Miles Briggs, Sue Webber and Murdo Fraser all attempt to bolster reporting and increase accountability, and I consider them proportionate and that they will strengthen and complement reporting. And I am mindful of the comments that have been made with regard to overlap and duplication. This brings me on to issues flagged in Oregon, where over 2/3 of data have found to be missing in reports on issues like complications. Annual reporting has shown that in practice, the application of the terminal illness threshold has expanded well beyond a normal understanding. And despite this being clear in annual reporting, the issues have not been rectified. And I doubt that this was the original intent of lawmakers. And in fact, last year in Washington State, they decided that due to budget restrictions, they would drop annual reporting on their operation of assisted dying altogether. Now, I think this again, in terms of the evidence from abroad, flags for us the issue that even with the best reporting, incrementalist expansion or a lack of corrective action remains a risk. And I would draw members' attention to Stuart McMillan, Stephen Kerr and Sue Webber's amendments 289, 296 and 116 in this regard, which attempt to address this. So, like other members, I commend the Scottish Government suicide prevention in Scotland. It is a world-leading strategy, as was highlighted earlier by Kevin Stewart. And I had the privilege of supporting development of that strategy in its very early format, and that certainly was not yesterday. And this strategy is essential when it comes to issues like the vulnerability of terminally ill people who are considering ending their own lives. And we know that with proper support, this desire to die diminishes. I will.
Jackie Dunbar.
I thank the member for taking the intervention, and like Jamie Green, I have been pretty silent for a change in this chamber. Could I ask the member, do you agree that there are currently no safeguards when a dying person attempts to take their own life or travel overseas for an assisted death? Under the current law, vulnerable folk can choose to starve themselves to death by voluntarily stopping eating and drinking, and many do. It's legal, and doctors are required to support them. So could the member explain why this is acceptable, while the safeguarded option set out in the bill isn't?
Audrey Nicholl.
I thank the member for for giving way, and I do not consider that that is acceptable whatsoever. I think the point that we're trying to make is that we want to make sure that the bill, if it is passed, has the most robust safeguards included in it. And my contention is that clear, accurate and comprehensive reporting is a significant part of that provision. Amendments like 295, in the name of Murdo Fraser, and my own 275 will better ensure that suicide prevention and support for those who are vulnerable is available for people considering taking their lives. Reviews mean that the Government is better equipped to take corrective measures when issues arise if the bill is passed. Safeguarding must be at the heart of any legislation passed relating to the use of lethal drugs, so I will push my amendments to be voted on now. Just finally, Presiding Officer, picking up on a couple of the points that were made during members' contributions and returning to Amendment 64, I note, not on this amendment, but I completely agree with points that Bob Doris made with regard to the importance of qualitative data, not just numbers, and I think that's worth drawing out in the debate. And I do acknowledge the points that have been made with regard to the ease and the practicalities that might be involved in collecting data within Amendment 64. I'm also drawn to the comments made by Bob Doris with regard to Amendment 296, and I will certainly reflect on the comments that Bob Doris made. So, to close, Presiding Officer, while I urge members to support the amendments in this grouping, I must warn that they can only go so far in pushing back against incrementalism that could come if we choose to endorse people taking their lives at the bill's final vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will just confirm, Ms Nicholl, you are pressing Amendment 275.
I am. Thank you.
Thank you. The question is that Amendment 275 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. I call Jackie Dunbar for a point of order.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. My vote is still counting down, so I'm not sure if my vote was registered. I would have voted no.
I can. Oh. I can confirm that your vote. Can you repeat what you said, Ms Dunbar?
I had, after the restart today, I had difficulty reconnecting, and when I did get through, I voted no with what I thought was 1 second to spare, but on my page it said I still had 15 seconds to spare, so I was just double checking that my vote had actually gone through.
Thank you, Ms Dunbar. It has been recorded.
Thank you.
Thank you. The result of the vote on amendment number 275 in the name of Audrey Nicholl is yes 58, no 60. There were 3 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 276 in the name of Audrey Nicholl, already debated with amendment 275. Audrey Nicholl, to move or not move?
Moved.
Thank you. The question is that amendment 276 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 276 in the name of Audrey Nicholl is yes 57, no 62. There were two abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. Point of order, Martin Whitfield.
Officer, I've had indications from members who were online that I think pursuant to the error that it may or may not have occurred within the first state, there was a misunderstanding that that vote was open longer than people who were listening in heard, because obviously it was 1 minute because it was the first vote. So just to clarify, the period of time that people have to vote going forward online would be helpful, I feel.
Yes, thank you, Mr Whitfield. For clarity, all the remaining votes will be 30-second divisions. Thank you. I call amendment 277 in the name of Audrey Nicholl, already debated with amendment 275. Audrey Nicholl, to move or not move?
Moved.
Thank you. The question is that amendment 277 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. I call Claire Adamson for a point of order. Can I have Ms Adamson's microphone, please?
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I voted yes.
Thank you, Ms Adamson. The result of the vote on amendment number 277 in the name of Audrey Nicholl is yes 57, no 61. There were 2 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 278 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with amendment 275. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 278 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 278 in the name of Bob Doris is yes 71, no 49. There were 2 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 279 in the name of Stuart McMillan, already debated with amendment 275. Stuart McMillan, to move or not move?
Not moved.
The amendment is not moved. I call amendment 57 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with amendment 275. Liam MacArthur, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 57 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. I call amendment 280 in the name of Jackie Bailey, already debated with amendment 275. Jackie Bailey, to move or not move?
Moved.
Thank you. The question is that amendment 280 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. I call Angela Constance for a point of order.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I lost connection. I would have voted yes.
Thank you, Ms Constance. So yes. I call Craig Hoy for a point of order.
Apologies, Presiding Officer. Similarly, I would have voted yes.
Thank you, Mr Hoy. The result of the vote on amendment number 280 in the name of Jackie Bailey is yes 76, no 42. There were 3 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 58 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with amendment 275. Liam MacArthur, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 58 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 58 in the name of Liam MacArthur is yes, 111. There were 4 votes against, there were 4 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 59 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with amendment 275. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Moved.
Moved. Thank you. The question is that amendment 59 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 59 in the name of Bob Doris is yes 71, no 46. There were 5 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 60 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with amendment 275. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 60 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 60 in the name of Bob Doris is yes 80, no 38. There were 3 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 61 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with amendment 275. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Moved.
Bear with me one moment. Thank you. The question is that amendment 61 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 61 in the name of Bob Doris is yes 88, no 31. There were 3 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 115 in the name of Sue Webber, already debated with amendment 275. Sue Webber, to move or not move? Moved. The question is that amendment 115 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 115 in the name of Sue Webber is yes 36, no 71. There were 8 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 62 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with amendment 275. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 62 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The amendment is agreed. I call amendment 281 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with amendment 275. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 281 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 281 in the name of Bob Doris is yes 63, no 54. There were 3 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 282 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with amendment 275. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 282 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. I call Angus Robertson for a point of order.
Presiding officer, I couldn't connect. I would have voted no.
Thank you, Mr Robertson. We'll ensure that's recorded. The result of the vote on amendment number 282 in the name of Bob Doris is yes 109, no 11. There were 3 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 283 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with amendment 275. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 283 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 283 in the name of Bob Doris is yes 105, no 17. There was 1 abstention. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 63 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with amendment 275. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Not moved.
The amendment is not moved. I call Amendment 284 in the name of Emma Roddick, already debated with Amendment 275. Emma Roddick, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 284 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 284 in the name of Emma Roddick The result of the vote on amendment number 284 in the name of Emma Roddick is yes 60, no 60. There were 3 abstentions. The amendment is therefore, the vote is tied. And as is usual, when the Parliament has not been able to reach a decision, I am obliged to exercise a casting vote, and the established convention is to vote in favour of the status quo, as the Chair is required to act impartially. Therefore, I cast my vote against the amendment, and the amendment is therefore not agreed to. Thank you. I call Amendment 285 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with Amendment 275. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 285 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 285 in the name of Bob Doris is yes 93, no 26. There were 5 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 286 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with amendment 275. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 286 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 286 in the name of Bob Doris is yes 105, no 12. There were 5 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call Amendment 287 in the name of Emma Roddick, already debated with Amendment 275. Emma Roddick, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 287 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 287 in the name of Emma Roddick is yes 78, no 43. There was 1 abstention. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 64 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with amendment 275. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Not moved.
The amendment is not moved. I call amendment 288 in the name of Miles Briggs, already debated with amendment 275. Miles Briggs, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 288 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. I call Graham Day for a point of order.
Apologies, Presiding Officer, I couldn't connect. I'd have voted no.
Thank you, Mr Day. The result of the vote on amendment number 288 in the name of Miles Briggs is yes 97, no 22. There were 4 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 289 in the name of Stuart McMillan, already debated with amendment 275. Stuart McMillan, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 289 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 289 in the name of Stuart McMillan is yes 56, no 64. There were 2 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 290 in the name of Stuart McMillan, already debated with amendment 275. Stuart McMillan, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 290 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 290 in the name of Stuart McMillan is yes 70, no 48. There were 3 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 291 in the name of Stephen Kerr, already debated with amendment 275. Stephen Kerr, to move or not move? Moved. The question is that amendment 291 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 291 in the name of Stephen Kerr is yes 52, no 67. There were 3 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 116 in the name of Sue Webber, already debated with amendment 275. Sue Webber, to move or not move? Moved. The question is that amendment 116 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 116 in the name of Sue Webber is yes 45, no 72. There were 4 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 292 in the name of Daniel Johnson, already debated with amendment 240. Daniel Johnson, to move or not move? Mr Johnson, perhaps you are on mute. I can see that Mr Johnson is saying not moved, but we cannot hear him. Bear with us for a moment, Mr Johnson. We'll see if we can change things from this end. So, on this issue, Mr McKee. Mr McKee, that's very helpful. However, it would be good if we could hear Mr Johnson, so let's just bear with him for a moment, because I wouldn't want to... I'd like to be entirely clear. Oh. Point of order, Claire Adamson.
Sir, I just wanted to make the point that this happened to me working from home the other day. The other members online in the group could all hear me. but it wasn't being put out into the chamber. And this is now, I think, the third or fourth time this has happened to people working. I did ask at that point that it be looked into, because I didn't think I was at fault. I still don't think I was at fault. And I think this is another example where there is a glitch in the system, and I think this is too important for that to let that stand.
Thank you, Ms Adamson. I'll certainly continue to look into this. So, I have to confess, because I was looking that way, I didn't see what Mr Johnson did. Oh, I see. Yes, thank you, thank you. And we're wholly content that Mr Johnson's amendment is not moved. Thank you. So, Amendment 292 is not moved. We move on, and I call Amendment 293 in the name of Miles Briggs, already debated with Amendment 240. Miles Briggs, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 293 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division, and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 293 in the name of Miles Briggs is yes 50, no 69. There were 2 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 294 in the name of Murdo Fraser, already debated with amendment 275. Murdo Fraser, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 294 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. Point of order, Mary McCallan.
I couldn't vote. I would have voted no.
Thank you, Ms McCallan. We'll ensure that's recorded. The result of the vote on amendment number 294 in the name of Murdo Fraser is yes 50, no 68. There was 1 abstention. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 295 in the name of Murdo Fraser, already debated with amendment 275. Murdo Fraser, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 295 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 295 in the name of Murdo Fraser is yes 45, no 69. There were 6 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call Amendment 296 in the name of Stephen Kerr, already debated with Amendment 275. Stephen Kerr to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 296 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. Therefore, we will move to division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 296 in the name of Stephen Kerr is yes 51, no 68. There were 3 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call Amendment 117 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with Amendment 112. Bob Doris to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 117 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 117 in the name of Bob Doris is yes 82, no 35. There were 5 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 118 in the name of Jackie Bailey, already debated with amendment 112. Jackie Bailey to move or not move?
Moved, Presiding Officer.
Thank you. The question is that Amendment 118 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 118 in the name of Jackie Bailey is yes 104, no 16. There were 2 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 119 in the name of Sue Webber, already debated with amendment 112. Sue Webber to move or not move? Moved. The question is that amendment 119 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 119 in the name of Sue Webber is yes 50, no 68. There were 5 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 297 in the name of Jeremy Balfour. Already debated with amendment 112. Jeremy Balfour to move or not move. The question is that amendment 297 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 297 in the name of Jeremy Balfour is yes 48, no 70. There were 3 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 298 in the name of Stephen Kerr, already debated with amendment 112. Stephen Kerr to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 298 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 298 in the name of Stephen Kerr is yes 49, no 66. There were 5 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 299 in the name of Miles Briggs, already debated with amendment 112. Miles Briggs to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 299 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 299 in the name of Miles Briggs is yes 101, no 17. There were 2 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 120 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with amendment 3. Liam MacArthur to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 120 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 120 in the name of Liam MacArthur is yes 92, no 18. There were 10 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 121 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated, with amendment 3. Liam MacArthur, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 121 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 121 in the name of Liam MacArthur is yes 95, no 17. There were 9 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 300 in the name of Miles Briggs, already debated, with amendment 150. Miles Briggs, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 300 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 300 in the name of Miles Briggs is yes 40, no 70. There were 8 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 65 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated, with amendment 94. Liam MacArthur, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 65 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 65 in the name of Liam MacArthur is yes 90, no 4. There were 21 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 122 in the name of Sue Webber, already debated, with amendment 90. Sue Webber, to move or not move? Moved. The question is that amendment 122 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division, and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 122 in the name of Sue Webber is yes 43, no 68. There were 9 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 123 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with amendment 3. Liam MacArthur, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 123 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 123 in the name of Liam MacArthur is yes 90, no 16. There were 12 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 124 in the name of Sue Webber, already debated with amendment 90. Sue Webber, to move or not move?
Not moved.
The amendment is not moved. I call amendment 66 in the name of Jackie Bailey.
Moved.
Already debated with amendment 240. Jackie Bailey has moved the amendment. The question is that amendment 66 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. I call amendment 125 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with amendment 3, and I remind members that if amendment 125 is agreed to, I cannot call amendment 301 due to preemption. Liam MacArthur, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 125 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 125 in the name of Liam MacArthur is yes 88, no 19. There were 11 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. Therefore, I cannot call amendment 301, and I call amendment 302 in the name of Miles Briggs, already debated with amendment 142. Miles Briggs, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 302 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. I call Shona Robertson for a point of order. Can we have Ms Robertson's microphone, please?
I would have voted no.
Thank you. We'll ensure that is recorded. I call Liam MacArthur for a point of order.
Thank you. I would have voted no.
Thank you, Mr MacArthur. The result of the vote on amendment number 302 in the name of Miles Briggs is yes 52, no 64. There were 4 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 303 in the name of Brian Whittle, already debated with amendment 149. Brian Whittle, to move or not move?
Move, Presiding Officer.
The question is that amendment 303 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 303 in the name of Brian Whittle is yes 64, no 49. There were 4 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 304 in the name of Brian Whittle, already debated with amendment 150. Brian Whittle, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 304 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 304 in the name of Brian Whittle is yes 66, no 44. There were 5 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 306 in the name of Fulton McGregor, already debated with amendment 150. Fulton McGregor, to move or not move?
Move, Presiding Officer.
The question is that amendment 306 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 306 in the name of Fulton McGregor is yes 70, no 46. There were 3 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 305 in the name of Brian Whittle, already debated with amendment 144. Brian Whittle to move or not move?
Not moved.
The amendment is not moved. I call amendment 20 in the name of Jackie Bailey, already debated with amendment 142. Jackie Bailey to move or not move?
Not moved.
The amendment is not moved. I call amendment 307 in the name of Jeremy Balfour, already debated with amendment 150. Jeremy Balfour to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 307 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 307 in the name of Jeremy Balfour is yes 50, no 68. There were 3 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 6. Point of order. Neil Gray.
Presiding Officer, I'm conscious that most of the remaining amendments that we are to take are in some way consequential on previous amendments that have been taken. This last one that was just moved, I recognise that was not moved by the member in charge of the amendment, was consequential on a previous amendment that was not passed. I wonder if I could seek your guidance on whether or not MSPs have an obligation to ensure we're making good law by keeping tabs on whether their amendments are consequential than previous.
That is a matter for members. The amendments do have to be called and disposed of. Thank you. Okay. I call Amendment 67 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with Amendment 150. Bob Doris to move or not move?
Move, Presiding Officer.
The question is that Amendment 67 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. I call Amendment 68 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with Amendment 94. Liam MacArthur to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 68 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. I call Amendment 126 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 90. Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 126 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. I call Amendment 69 in the name of Jackie Bailey, already debated with Amendment 240. Jackie Bailey to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 69 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. I call Amendment 127 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 90. Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 127 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. I call Amendment 21 in the name of Daniel Johnson, already debated with Amendment 142. Daniel Johnson
Moved.
to move or not move? The question is that Amendment 21 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 21 in the name of Daniel Johnson is yes 56, no 58. There were 3 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 308 in the name of Jackie Bailey, already debated with amendment 142. Jackie Bailey, to move or not move?
Not moved.
The amendment is not moved. I call amendment 128 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with amendment 90. Cabinet Secretary, to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that amendment 128 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are agreed. I call amendment 70 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with amendment 90. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Not moved.
The amendment is not moved. I call amendment 71 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with amendment 247. Liam MacArthur, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 71 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. I call amendment 309 in the name of Fulton McGregor, already debated with amendment 240. Fulton McGregor, to move or not move?
Not moved.
Thank you. The amendment is not moved. I call amendment 129 in the name of Jackie Bailey, already debated with amendment 256. Jackie Bailey, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 129 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. I call amendment 310 in the name of Stephen Kerr, already debated with amendment 275. Stephen Kerr, to move or not move?
Moved.
Thank you. The question is that amendment 310 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 310 in the name of Stephen Kerr is yes 46, no 68. There were 7 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 311 in the name of Daniel Johnson, already debated with amendment 240. Daniel Johnson, to move or not move?
Not moved.
Thank you. I call amendment 72 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with amendment 240. Liam MacArthur, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 72 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. I call Annie Wells for a point of order.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. My phone wouldn't work and I would have voted no.
Thank you, Ms Wells. We'll ensure that's recorded. The result of the vote on amendment number 72 in the name of Liam MacArthur is yes 75, no 38. There were 5 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 312 in the name of Ross Greer, already debated, with amendment 198. Ross Greer, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that amendment 312 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. I call amendment 130 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated, with amendment 90. Cabinet Secretary, to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that amendment 130 be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
We are agreed. I call amendment 73 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated, with amendment 240. Liam MacArthur, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 73 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 73 in the name of Liam MacArthur is yes 76, no 37. There were 5 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 131 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated, with amendment 90. Cabinet Secretary, to move formally.
Moved.
The question is that amendment 131 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. I call amendment 74 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated, with amendment 240. Liam MacArthur, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 74 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. I call Graham Day for a point of order.
Apologies, Presiding Officer, my app wasn't working. I would have voted yes.
Thank you, Mr Day. The result of the vote on amendment number 74 in the name of Liam MacArthur is yes 74, no 41. There were 6 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 132 in the name of Jackie Bailey, already debated, with amendment 256. Jackie Bailey, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 132 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. I call amendment 313 in the name of Michael Mara, already debated, with amendment 112. Michael Mara, to move or not move?
Not moved.
Thank you. I call amendment 133 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated, with amendment 142. Liam MacArthur, to move or not move?
Moved.
I call amendment 133B in the name of Ross Greer, already debated, with amendment 3. Ross Greer, to move or not move?
Not move.
The amendment is not moved.
Call the next one. Yes. Go to 133A.
I call amendment 133A in the name of Ross Greer, already debated, with amendment 3. Ross Greer, to move or not move?
Move.
The question is that amendment 133A be agreed to. Are we all agreed? No. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 133A in the name of Ross Greer is yes 74, no 40. There were 5 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. Liam MacArthur to press or withdraw amendment 133 as amended.
Pressed.
The question is that amendment 133 as amended be agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes.
The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 133 in the name of Liam MacArthur is yes 77, no 38. There were 4 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 314 in the name of Michael Mara, already debated, with amendment 112. Michael Mara to move or not move?
Not moved.
Thank you. I call amendment 76 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated, with amendment 144. Bob Doris to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 76 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 76 in the name of Bob Doris is yes 56, no 48. There were 11 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 315 in the name of Paul O'Kane, already debated, with amendment 144. And I remind members that if amendment 315 is agreed to, I cannot call amendment 76 due to a preemption. Paul O'Kane to move or not move?
Yes, I have to ask him.
Can I confirm, Mr O'Kane, are you moving or not moving amendment 315?
I am moving.
Moving. Thank you. The question is that amendment 315 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 315 in the name of Paul O'Kane is yes 25, no 90. There were 4 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 77 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with amendment 144. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 77 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 77 in the name of Bob Doris is yes 56, no 51. There were 9 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 78 in the name of Brian Whittle, already debated with amendment 150. Brian Whittle, to move or not move?
Moved, please.
Thank you. I call amendment 78A in the name of Brian Whittle, already debated with amendment 150. Brian Whittle, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 78A be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. As amended. Brian Whittle, to press or withdraw amendment 78.
Press.
As amended. The question is that amendment 78 as amended be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. I call amendment 316 in the name of Daniel Johnson, already debated with amendment 2.
Moved.
Daniel Johnson, to move or not move?
Moved.
Thank you. The question is that amendment 316 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 316 in the name of Daniel Johnson is yes 70, no 45. There were 5 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 317 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with amendment 2. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Not moved.
Thank you. I call amendment 318 in the name of Sue Webber, already debated with amendment 2. Sue Webber, to move or not move?
Not moved.
Thank you. I call amendment 319 in the name of Paul O'Kane, already debated with amendment 144. Claire Baker, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 319 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The result of the vote on amendment number 319 in the name of Paul O'Kane is yes 63, no 54. There were 3 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 134 in the name of Sue Webber, already debated with amendment 90. Sue Webber, to move or not move?
Not moved.
Thank you. I call amendment 79 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with amendment 150. Liam MacArthur, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 79 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. No. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 79 in the name of Liam MacArthur is yes 85, no 28. There were 4 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 320 in the name of Paul O'Kane, already debated with amendment 144, and I remind members that if amendment 320 is agreed to, I cannot call amendment 80 due to a preemption. Claire Baker, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 320 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 320 in the name of Paul O'Kane is yes 28, no 85. There were 2 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 80 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with amendment 144. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 80 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 80 in the name of Bob Doris is yes 59, no 43. There were 11 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 321 in the name of Paul O'Kane, already debated with amendment 144. Claire Baker, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 321 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division, and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 321 in the name of Paul O'Kane is yes 63, no 54. There were 3 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call Amendment 135 in the name of Sue Webber, already debated with Amendment 90. Sue Webber to move or not move?
Not moved, Presiding Officer.
Thank you. I call Amendment 81 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with Amendment 150. Liam MacArthur to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 81 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. I call Amendment 82 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with Amendment 144. Bob Doris to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that Amendment 82 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division. Members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 82 in the name of Bob Doris is yes 50, no 55. There were 11 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 83 in the name of Brian Whittle, already debated with amendment 150. Brian Whittle to move or not move?
Moved.
Thank you. I call amendment 83A in the name of Brian Whittle, already debated with amendment 150. Brian Whittle to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 83A be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Brian Whittle to press or withdraw amendment 83 as amended. The question is that amendment 83 as amended be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. We are agreed. I call amendment 322 in the name of Daniel Johnson, already debated with amendment 2. Daniel Johnson to move or not move?
Moved.
Thank you. The question is that amendment 322 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 322 in the name of Daniel Johnson is yes 70, no 47. There were 3 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. I call amendment 323 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with amendment 2. Bob Doris to move or not move?
Moved.
Sorry, Mr Doris.
Not moved.
Thank you. The amendment is not moved. I call amendment 324 in the name of Sue Webber, already debated with amendment 2. Sue Webber to move or not move?
Not moved.
Thank you. I call amendment 84 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with amendment 144. Bob Doris to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 84 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division, and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 84 in the name of Bob Doris is yes 42, no 66. There were 8 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed. I call amendment 85 in the name of Liam MacArthur, already debated with amendment 150. Liam MacArthur, to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is that amendment 85 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The Parliament is not agreed. There will be a division, and members should cast their votes now. The vote is closed. The result of the vote on amendment number 85 in the name of Liam MacArthur is yes 85, no 29. There were 4 abstentions. The amendment is therefore agreed. We have had detailed consideration of amendments, and members have noted the manner and spirit in which our proceedings have been conducted, but that ends consideration of Stage 3 amendments. And as members will be aware, I am required under standing orders to decide whether or not, in my view, any provision of a bill relates to a protected subject matter, and that is whether it modifies the electoral system and franchise for Scottish parliamentary elections. In the case of this bill, in my view, no provision of assisted dying for terminally ill adults Scotland Bill relates to a protected subject matter. Therefore, the bill does not require a supermajority to be passed at Stage 3. Our next item of business is consideration of business motion 21096 in the name of Graham Day on behalf of the Parliamentary Bureau on changes to business. Any member who wishes to speak to the motion should press their request to speak button now. And I call on the Minister to move the motion. Presiding
Officer, if I may, in moving the business motion on behalf of the Bureau, I want briefly to provide members with context and a clear understanding of what adhering to it and avoiding the need for exceptional sittings of the kind we have had today will require. Business managers in the Parliament have put together a programme for the next 2 weeks which will complete the outstanding legislation whilst avoiding the need to convene on Fridays or Mondays, or indeed to extend Session 6 by 24 hours. And we are giving members the earliest possible sight of these proposals in order to help them make any arrangements that they require to. However, sitting until 10 p.m. next Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday will not in itself guarantee that we achieve that. In order to avoid exceptional sittings, members, including ministers, will need to play their part by ensuring we stick to timings allocated to each item in the programme. Business managers will be able to advise their own parties as to what that might require of individuals, and I am happy to have conversations with independent members if that were helpful. The proposed programme does not seek to curtail consideration of or debate on very important matters, but it is a fact that some of the most powerful and impactful contributions heard in this chamber can also be amongst the most succinct, and I would ask Parliament to approve the business motion.
Thank you. No member is asked to speak to the motion. Therefore, the question is that motion 21096 be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. The motion is therefore agreed, and as there are no questions to be put as a result of today's business, I close this meeting.